Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. A couple of months ago, Owlcat released a survey asking for your feedback on Rogue Trader. They have finally released the results of that survey, and it's actually pretty interesting, so I thought some of you might want to go through it. So it starts out with letting you know that over 5,000 players took the survey, and they rated Rogue Trader 4.3 out of 5, which is very similar to the 4.35 out of 5 that it was rated during the alpha. But the difference is 5,000 players is several times more than how many people filled out the survey for the alpha. So it's actually a very, very good sign that as the size of the amount of people playing the game increases, it seems like all of us are in agreement. Owlcat has something interesting here, and we're really looking forward to getting the full result. But of course, nothing's perfect, and so one of the things Owlcat mentioned as an area of feedback was insufficient reactivity of NPCs and companions to the Rogue Trader's biography, doctrines, and convictions. And this is something I definitely agree with. For the most part, these aspects of your character felt ignored. So Owlcat said there were also concerns about the conviction tags often feeling off or missing altogether. And this is because a significant chunk of these reactions were not in the game yet. They're already busy adding these reactions as the article is being written, along with the conviction tags that were not properly placed for the beta. So this is fantastic news. I'm definitely on that list again, not only for the reactivity, but for the conviction tags. A lot of times it felt like you should have options that were not provided. So definitely, once again, really looking forward to what the full result is going to look like. And I also strongly agree with the next section, where over 50% of people surveyed found our new introduced tutorials useful, and the only negative criticism was that there was not enough of them. The tutorials and glossary were absolutely fantastic. Really, really helps you unpack what's happening in the game, especially for someone like me who's completely new to Warhammer. It's nice that at any point in time I could pull up certain words or phrases or titles and refresh myself on what these things actually mean. It makes it much, much easier to follow along with the story. And they did a great job with the log as well. When you look at the combat log, a lot of times in CRPGs, things like damage totals, they just give you the total number and throw it at you, and then you kind of have to pull it apart and try to make sure you're getting all the damage that you would expect. I felt like the log and Rogue Trader did a great job of actually breaking down here are the different areas where your damage is coming from. And so, yeah, just all around, it seems like they put in a lot of effort to make sure players understand what's happening in the game. Next section is difficulty curve. And so they said overall, it seems we're on the right track, although some players on normal difficulty reported that there could be a bit more of a challenge. So they're going to be carefully tuning those encounters, especially those in the later acts of the game. Pretty sure this is something that I mentioned in my review of the beta, that I did feel like normal was a little bit too easy. Core was available, but I don't like playing on core when I feel like there's a good possibility the game is buggy. This discussion seems to come up repeatedly anytime I talk about difficulty, where I get people in the comments saying CRPG players prefer harder difficulties, and I should report, difficulties like normal as essentially easy and core as normal. And I just want to reiterate, and in fact, this is going to be reiterated at the end of these survey results as well. The vast majority of players play on normal, even people who love CRPGs. Like, it's just a fact. It's just a fact. It seems like there's a lot of CRPG players who want to believe that, we're this special group and we love complexity and challenge more than any other players, and so we always choose the hardest difficulties. That's not the case at all. You can look at the Steam achievements for Wrath of the Righteous and compare who has finished the game on core and who has finished the game on normal. Most people play on normal. It just is what it is. And so it's definitely important that Owlcat fine fine tunes normal and tries to give players a good experience, because that's where the vast majority of their player base is going to be. Next up is doctrines, and doctrines are essentially classes. And so they said among the doctrines available, marksman was an undisputed leader in all aspects, so much that they're considering lowering its potential a bit. Marksman was incredible. I had 2 marksmen on my team, didn't feel like a crowd at all. Absolutely allowed me to just mow through groups. I don't know if I feel like its potential needs to be lowered. To be honest, I didn't feel that way. I really felt like the problem was some of the other classes, really specifically adept, don't measure up. Because when you look at leader still works perfectly because you can use it to fuel other classes. So to give your marksman, or I think what it was, soldier, to give those classes more opportunities to do damage, to do what they need to do. So I felt like leader was fantastic, and soldier was fantastic for being out in the midst of the field and trying to mitigate the damage that you encounter. So I felt like the other classes were great in their own way. It's just that their purpose was not mowing through groups. And so it wasn't quite as flashy, but still very, very effective. The one that was just bringing up the rear clearly was Adept. And they mention it here. Adept appears to be the least popular, with the most common complaints being lack of visible impact and difficulty in understanding its mechanics. In the beta, this doctrine also suffered from a whole spectrum of bugs, which made the abilities even more confusing. We will be fixing these, tweaking some abilities, and reviewing the confusion and unclear descriptions. I know that is very, very welcome information for the people who have played the beta. I can't tell you how many comments I got on my video saying Adept is terrible, I don't understand it, I never use it, we should just ignore this class, etc., etc. I feel like they do have the core of what could be a really, really good class, but that's the one they need to fine tune. And as long as they can fine tune that and make it what it's really supposed to be, I don't think there's a problem. I don't think that marksman really needs to be nerfed. I think the doctors are in a really good place, and they've already said that they're going to be adding even more. So I'm looking forward to what the full list looks like, and I'm hoping we get a doctrine that more closely aligns to being a psyker. I felt like in the beta, being a psyker felt kind of like a side mill, basically. You know, like it didn't seem like the doctors were set up in a way where you can make being a psyker be the full focus for your character. And so I'm hoping in the full game that's not going to be the case. We'll see. UI is another area where they've gotten a lot of positive feedback, but there are a few things they want to focus on. First and foremost, the leveling UI. They received a lot of feedback that the window's too small and there are way too many options in the list. Strongly agree with that. It was honestly, if you didn't already have your build written out, it was a chore going through all the list of different options to figure out what it is that would actually help you. And so on the one hand, of course, I appreciate that because it gives you a lot of flexibility in how you make your build. But yeah, they need to do a better job of trying to present this information in a way where it's more valuable to the player. And so they did say that lack of respec options were mentioned as well. You can't respec, as far as I know, in the beta. So they're going to be addressing all of those issues. Definitely appreciate that. I would love the ability to play around with different builds as I'm leveling the character. So they did provide some screenshots of what you can expect. So this one, I'm not sure what Renegade is. I assume it's some form of marksman. Maybe it's a upgrade class. In fact, yeah, level 15. So maybe it's an upgrade class we'll be able to go into. This looks different. This looks very much so different. So it was not organized by ranks to the right here beforehand. I can't tell from these screenshots whether or not this is a big upgrade in the ease with which you can view some of the abilities, but I can't remember if there were thumbs up abilities before, and I don't know what these stars mean. So it definitely seems like they've added some things into the interface in order to make it easier to view, but without being able to get into it myself, I'm not sure how much better it's going to be. But I definitely agree that overall the UI is very nice. It really fits in with the theme of the game, so I like it. They just need to make this information look a little bit clearer, and it's obvious that they're working towards that, so definitely good to know. Another area that they're going to improve upon is the cargo and loot UI. So in the feedback, they've seen an overwhelming demand for proper drag and drop scrolling, sorting, searching, and categorization. I strongly agree with this. I actually love the cargo system in the game. I know there's some people who feel like it's a little overly complicated, but I think it fits in perfectly with the Warhammer aesthetic. But they just need to do a little bit better job of making it easy for you to get into the shop, do what you need to do, and then get right back out of it. And then finally, the targeting UI and ability formulas, crit chance, cover benefits, visibility of the target, and deep buffs and debuffs were not always obvious. This is absolutely true. Formulas and ability descriptions and combat logs were confusing, and damage numbers were often way off the expected values. That is true as well. So I mentioned before that I love the log in the way that it broke everything down, but because it broke everything down, it was easy to see where when you're like, hey, that's not the way, that's not the number I should have come up with. So, but I just took that as beta bugs that they would have to work through. We have fixed these incorrect values, made the formula shown as values by default, and increased visibility of icons and lines of sight. When selecting targets for a ranged attack or ability, you can now also press tab and hover your mouse over the hit chance or debuff buff icons to get detailed information about them. And so looking at the screenshot, you can see when you're hovering over it, you can get not only your total hit chance, but your initial hit chance, and then how much dodge or cover that they have. So you can decide if maybe you need to pull those numbers down some to give you a better chance to be able to hit your target. Very, very cool stuff. And then you'll also be able to see some of the debuffs that you've already put on them. Next, they talk about reputation and profit factor, which is basically the system used to determine what items you can and cannot buy. We've seen a fair share of confusion on profit factor, vendor trade, and reputation systems. A lot of people didn't figure it out at all throughout their playthrough, and others were confused about how the profit factor value was calculated. Not only will we be implementing a number of tutorials to help you figure out these systems, but we've also put a lot of work into making the UI more clear and self-explanatory. Profit factor will also now be visible in the colony screen. So when I first played this game for the alpha, I didn't understand the system at all and I hated it. When I played the game again for the beta, it clicked for me, and now I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic, and I think it does a great job of putting you in the shoes of a ruler. So really glad that they're going to be adding some more tutorials on this. I think if people understand it, they'll be much more comfortable with it. And again, Owlcat did provide a couple of screenshots. So it looks like your trade items are organized in a fashion that's a bit more clear. In fact, yeah, I don't think there was this bar here before. So as your reputation increases, you can clearly see what items you do and do not have access to. This is the screen where you can drag and drop cargo in order to be able to increase your reputation. I can see that they definitely made some changes here. I'm not sure yet whether or not it's superior to what's before, but nice to know that they're at least working on it. And then the reputation screen looks like that's changed some as well. Yeah, I don't think you have this profit factor breakdown before in the beta. So good stuff, trying to make things more clear for the players. Next, they talked about cutscenes and how most people were very pleased with their approach to cutscenes, except for the fact that obviously some of them were buggy and you couldn't skip cutscenes, which was obviously an issue if you were replaying the game. So both of these things will be addressed in the main game. No surprise there, but good for them to call it out. And then you had ground combat, which received a solid 4.2 out of 5 score in the beta, which is up from 3.94 in the alpha. I definitely agree that the ground combat is a really, really strong part of Rogue Trader. I actually enjoy combat, especially the way it rewards you when you put together a really competent team. So no surprise there. I definitely agree with that score. I also agree with the score for space combat. And they said we are at 3.7 out of 5, which is up from 3.4 in the alpha, but obviously still not where Owlcat wants it. I'll be honest with you, I don't think space combat is all that great in the beta. And in fact, I mentioned it in my review of the beta, and pretty sure I mentioned it in the last video when the release date was announced. I'm not a believer yet when it comes to space combat. That being said, the version of space combat that we've been given is very, very sparse. So you can't, most of the officer abilities, a lot of them are not in there. Like you can't set up your different companions to give you abilities while you're in space combat, things of that nature. A lot of the vendors, I believe, that you're supposed to be able to use in order to build up your ship. Some of them aren't in there. You can't customize your ship. So there's a lot of things regarding space combat that are not in the beta. So it's absolutely possible that the version that we get when at full release is going to be much more enjoyable, but again, I'm just not a big believer in it at this point, but we'll see. We'll see. I have faith in Owlcat. At the end of the day, I have faith in Owlcat. Space exploration was rated 4.1, which is up from 3.9 in the alpha. And once again, I agree. I actually love space exploration in Rogue Trader. It might be my favorite aspect of the game because they do a fantastic job of making everything seem very, very dangerous, seeming like every time you jump to a new system, anything can happen and you're kind of on pins and needles. Like, I think they did a really, really good job of establishing why the rogue trader is considered so special and why being someone who's willing to explore these outer reaches of space is such a big deal. Great, great stuff. Colony management is only 3.4 at this point, which is far less than they would like to see. I absolutely agree with that score. I am not a fan of colony management. And one of the main reasons why is the necessity to personally visit the colony to claim a reward. So as I just mentioned, it's very dangerous going through space. And so the idea that I visit a planet, set up a colony, and then I'm all the way somewhere else on the map, and then some sort of mission that I set up there finally completes, and I've got to go all the way back in order to claim my reward. Nah, I wasn't a fan of that. Wasn't a fan of that at all, especially since it's not like you actually land and talk to the leader and have that whole dialogue. You just basically, I think, either click on the planet or you just need to be in the same system and open up your menu, and then you just pull down the reward and go on about your way. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of time. Let them figure out how to get that reward to me. Thank you very much. And then finally, the global map is at 3.93, which is a decent score, but it could be better. They're going to be adding tutorials, upgrading a few visuals, adding more text-based warp encounters, and tuning the number and frequency of combat warp encounters. Next up is locations, and they mentioned that before in the alpha, they got feedback that there was not enough of a grim darkness feel to the overall game, and it appears that that those fears have been completely addressed. And I feel like they did a great way. They figured out a great balanced way to do that, right? Because there are some people who wanted them to have a lot more heavily populated areas, and I had mentioned some concerns about whether or not the technology could handle that. But they found other ways through the aesthetic, through the dialogue and some of the things that you experience to really establish the world and the way that you would expect Warhammer to be, while at the same time doing that in a way that doesn't drag down the game. So kudos to Owlcat, absolutely. So they mentioned the most popular locations were the prologue and another place that I won't mention, but looks very pretty, and then one other place. Oh, and the Inquisition Shipwreck, which was absolutely fantastic, and the Adeptus Administratum Palace. Locations from the Dark City of Comarog were less popular, hovering around the score of 5. To an extent, it's to be expected. They were still largely a work in progress in the beta. In addition, in the first few days of the beta, there was a bug that allowed you to skip most of Act 3 by taking the wrong portal. Didn't know that, which left many players confused. We will continue polishing and improving those locations as we prepare for release. I love the dialogue and the quest of Kamara. I don't know if I necessarily like the aesthetic of the location as much as the other acts. Again, because it was such a work in progress and there were just clearly so many bugs, it was a little bit harder to enjoy it. And so we'll see how that all shakes out when we have a full release. Now, when it comes to companions, no big surprise. Argenta again ranks on top. Sooner or later, they're gonna have to make our romance option. Or here's what you could do, Owlcat. Why don't you just put the dialogue in there and then let the mods figure it out? Put the dialogue and the voice acting in there, and then let the mods, mess up the lore if that's what we're determined to do. But Argenta obviously is fantastic, not only because she has the marksman class, but also because just in general her personality is really, really interesting. Unfortunately, same as last time, the least popular companions are Jay and Adira, although the gap isn't as big this time. We are already implementing a number of further tweaks and improvements, which will make them more interesting and unique, both mechanically and narratively. I'm not completely sure why players don't like Adira and Jay. I think it's obvious why Argenta is so well liked. I think when it comes to Jay, I've always said I hate it when you give me party members later. Now she doesn't come way, way late, so it's not really bad here. But again, by the time you pick up Jay, you might have already figured out what your main team is going to be. And so you could easily decide, I don't really have a place for her, especially considering the first batch of companions you get are really, really strong. Like, I'm pretty sure for my first playthrough, I'm just going to stick with them. Like, you would kind of have to force Jay in, like if you want to do a romance with her or something like that. But with Adira, I don't understand why people don't like Adira, because I feel like she's very, very interesting, especially if you want to follow a chaos route. And it's really cool having a psyker in the party. She can absolutely light up whole groups of enemies. So don't know what that's about, but it'll be interesting to see what they try to do to make things a little bit more even. And then finally, Owlcat provides the full survey results. So as I mentioned before, 72% of the respondents prefer normal difficulty. And again, the vast majority of people who are playing the beta are folks who love Owlcat games and therefore most likely love CRPGs. So this is hardcore CRPG enthusiasts. They're all playing on normal. It just is what it is, y'all. If y'all prefer core, that's cool. Prefer core. Argenta, of course, was selected as the best companion. 4 players had never heard of Warhammer 40K before Rogue Trader, one for each of the Chaos Gods. It'll be interesting to see how many people are introduced to Warhammer for the first time through this game. I'm definitely on the list. Leave me a comment down below if this will be your first time playing with something that's in the 40K universe. 25% of respondents picked the Ostrom Militarum background. I think that's what I used in my background as well. I don't remember why I liked this so much though. 36% of correspondents or respondents have chosen Death World as their home world. Survival of the fittest, awesome. And then finally, 68% of the respondents are hardcore CRPG fans with a playtime of over 1,000 hours. Fantastic. Anyway, that is the full video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Really, really looking forward to the full release of this game. Leave me a comment down below with your thoughts on this information, or if you have any additional information you want to add. And as always, appreciate you all. Hope you all enjoy this video. Take care.